You're watching ITV News Meridian here in the southeast.
The headlines this Wednesday. A sombre procession as the Queen's coffin leaves Buckingham Palace for the last time. Thousands queuing to pay their final respects, including Tony from Etchingham.
I just literally was commuting into work this morning and just felt compelled to get off the train and join the queue. That's quite difficult to explain, to be honest.
Hospitals, dentists and doctors, what Monday's bank holiday for the funeral will mean for your medical appointments.
Also, how do you speak to children about the Queen's death? Expert advice as schools prepare to shut for the day as a mark of respect.
Here we are at Los Angeles Airport, just boarding the flight to London. Not long now, and I'll be right in the middle of everything.
An 11,000-mile journey for one of the Queen's most loyal followers to say her last goodbye.
The best thing that I saw in Windsor was a card on some flowers, and it said, "Dear Queen Elizabeth, I wish you were still alive." And I thought, well, that says it all, really.
Good evening. Thousands of mourners from Kent, Sussex and Essex have travelled to London for a chance to see the Queen lying in state at Westminster Hall.
Earlier today, Her late Majesty made her final journey from Buckingham Palace, where her coffin was followed by her son, King Charles III, and other members of the royal family.
Our political correspondent Phil Hornby has been with people from our region who are queuing to pay their respects. Phil, the line goes on for many miles.
Yes, and it's growing all the time, Sangeeta. It's been a long wait for those people, but just about an hour ago the first people were allowed into Westminster Hall. We can see them now, live pictures from inside Westminster Hall of people very somberly filing past the coffin of the late Queen, who spent last night, of course, in Buckingham Palace and today was brought from her palace here to the Palace of Westminster. And so began the final journey. The bearer party, commanded by Second Lieutenant Freddie Hobbs, who's 24 and from West Sussex. He returned from service in Iraq only last Friday. Watching on the other side of the River Thames, the people waiting to pay their respects at the lying in state.
She's the Queen. She's been Queen all my life, literally all my life. And she's given up her life for us. We formed a little group and we've found some new friends. And it's like the Queen's magic is still working.
Tony, why are you here in the queue?
Difficult, quite frankly, to answer that. I just literally was commuting into work this morning and just felt compelled to get off the train and join the queue. It's quite difficult to explain, to be honest, but I think, you know, as we've experienced, all of us individually, there's been a natural draw to kind of show our kind of emotions and appreciation for the Queen, and mine was just to come here spontaneously, quite frankly.
Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me.
After a short service, the family made their way out of Westminster Hall, the most ancient part of the Palace of Westminster. 1,000 years of history. 2 decades ago, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was brought here. Now, her daughter. And a chance for thousands of people from across the southeast to come here to pay their respects.
Phil, you know Westminster Hall well. It has a long association with the royal family.
Yes, as I said there, Andrew, it is the most ancient part of the Palace of Westminster. When the place burnt down in the 19th century, they saved Westminster Hall. When it was bombed in the Second World War, they saved Westminster Hall. And you can see inside Westminster Hall now, more people are filing past the coffin of the late Queen. The hall has seen the lying in state of many monarchs. It's even seen one monarch, Charles I, sentenced to death. You can see a plaque on the floor that tells you where that happened. But of course the focus now is on the late Queen, people somberly filing past, as they will night and day until 6:30 on Monday morning, when the doors will finally close and the final preparations will be underway for the late Queen's funeral, which will take place just across the road from the Houses of Parliament in Westminster Abbey. That's on Monday.
Phil Hornby, thank you.
Members of the public wishing to attend the lying in state are being asked to plan ahead and be prepared to wait overnight.
Kevin Ashford has more on what those waiting to pay their respects can expect.
Now, London is busy. It's hardly breaking news, is it? But the next few days are going to be something rather different. Some estimates reckon that up to 1 million people are going to be coming here to pay their last respects to the late Queen. If you're going to be one of them, we're being advised to check your travel plans very carefully. For example, some rail companies are laying on extra services, including overnight ones. Once you get here, things like the Underground, restaurant, bars and pavements are going to be packed.
Once you do get into London, there is going to be a lot of queuing to see the Queen's coffin, and that queue will stretch from Westminster Hall for possibly up to 10 miles, winding along the banks of the River Thames, past landmarks such as the London Eye and HMS Belfast, before it reaches its official endpoint in Southwark Park. There is a separate accessible route for those who need it, which begins at Tate Britain and has timed entry slots.
You could be queuing for anything up to 30 hours and there won't be many opportunities to sit and have a rest because the queue is going to be constantly moving. There's 1,000 stewards, volunteers and police officers to keep everybody safe, and there are extra facilities laid on like toilets and water fountains. People are being advised to bring suitable clothing, food and drink and any essential medical equipment and medication that they might need. And once you get to the front of the queue, you're going to have to go through airport-style security. People are allowed to take only one small bag into Westminster Hall. Everything else is going to have to be left at a bag drop area. The Queen is going to be lying in state until 6:30 on Monday morning, but the queue is expected to close much earlier than that to allow everyone through.
And we'll return to London a little later on. You are watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up.
Being prepared, how the oldest of Scout mottos came in useful when Tom and Amy met the late Queen Elizabeth.
And we are with mourners both young and old as cathedrals right across our region become the focal point of people's grief.
And you can find more on today's top stories by going to our website itv.com/Meridian.
Some other news now, and a Kent cafe owner says she's struggling to survive with spiralling business costs.
Emma Harris's cafeteria in Herne Bay is one of hundreds of small businesses in the southeast struggling to stay afloat with power bills and inflation at a 40-year high. John Ryle has our report.
Today's marginal fall in the inflation rate to 9.9% will have little or no impact on the financial crisis facing this cafe. The owner says she's had to resort to crowdfunding to survive.
I didn't want to set up a GoFundMe page. I see it as a cry for help. So I spoke to family, some close friends. They thought it was an amazing idea. More people need to ask for help. So I've set up a GoFundMe page to try and help cover with costs, get me back up and running.
Help for households with energy costs is clear cut, a 2-year price cap. But help for businesses is shorter term and less clear. And then there are all the other rising overheads.
Gas, electric, petrol, stock, and I use certain suppliers for certain stock, as does all the little local businesses in Herne Bay. And it's so expensive, 50%, 60%.
A similar story at this Sussex greengrocer.
We're wondering how much more our customers can sort of take on top of everything else that's increasing. Suppliers are putting up prices almost every month in some areas. We've seen bread and milk go up by 20%. And it's challenging keeping on top of it.
And economists say the crisis facing businesses like this is likely to deepen in the months ahead.
If you think of fuel prices, that's one of the big drivers of the headline inflation measure at the moment, and certain businesses will be much more exposed to rising transportation costs, and therefore they'll face an even greater squeeze than households are feeling at the moment. Another important component is food costs. They've increased dramatically since last year, and that will affect businesses in hospitality, like the cafe that you've spoken to, or other restaurants who have to buy food as an input.
Emma Harris has had 6 good years at the Gingerbread Cafe, but tonight she's far from confident about surviving into year 7. John Ryle, ITV News, Herne Bay.
Another 538 migrants crossed the Channel in small boats yesterday. The Ministry of Defence says they seized 11 boats in British waters. The Dover MP, Natalie Elphick, has again demanded the French step up their patrols on beaches near Calais and Boulogne, from where so many of the crossings take place.
Some hospital appointments have been called off due to the bank holiday on Monday to mark the Queen's funeral. A number of GP surgeries, dentists and pharmacies across the South East will also close.
Well, Tom Savides is in Brighton. Tom, what advice is the NHS giving to patients?
Well, the NHS says there will be some disruption on Monday, with non-urgent and routine procedures, some of them being postponed. It says for patients not to contact them directly because the NHS will contact patients if their appointments are affected. Well, here with me now is Geoffrey Bowden from Health Watch Brighton and Hove. Geoffrey, should patients be concerned?
I don't think they should be overly worried. Many patients will be relieved because they'll want to watch Her Majesty's funeral along with many NHS workers who've been working their socks off over the pandemic. So I don't think they should be overly worried, but any disruption to care, non-urgent or urgent, is always a concern, especially if you waited a long time to get that appointment. But I'm sure the NHS will work its socks off to catch up.
Different hospitals have different approaches on Monday. Could that be a bit confusing for patients?
Well, I think the overarching message is don't call them, they'll call you, or get in touch either by text message, email, carrier pigeon, whatever they're using, they'll get in touch with you. But don't clog up the system by contacting your NHS provider, whether it's a hospital or a GP surgery, which is also postponing appointments on Monday.
Now, the COVID vaccination programme for the autumn is now being rolled out by the NHS. Could there be some disruption to that, do you think?
Well, from a personal point of view, I know that it's not going to be. I've managed to be contacted via the NHS app. I've got my appointment. I'm going in on Sunday. I've also been contacted by my GP practice to have my flu booster jab. So I think we won't see a disruption to the COVID rollout or to flu vaccinations either.
OK, Geoffrey, thanks for joining us this evening. Well, the NHS is now rescheduling quite a few appointments, and those appointments, of course, will be pushing back, if they're cancelled and postponed, certain procedures over the next few weeks.
Tom Savides, thank you. Now, for children, the Queen's death and all the media coverage around it may be very unsettling. Experts saying the youngsters may worry about someone they know dying, or they might be experiencing feelings and emotions from a previous bereavement.
So a charity from Rochester called Holding On Letting Go has published some guidance to help all of us when talking to children.
I'm pleased to say the charity's chief executive, Caroline Ford, joins us. Am I right in saying talking is really important?
Yes, it's really important for us to be able to talk to our children about what's going on for them, about what they're feeling, and for them to be able to tell us how they're feeling, and for us also to be able to share feelings that we have with them as well.
I understand the Queen's passing may spark anxiety among children about their own relatives. Is that something we should discuss with them?
It's quite common for children to be worried about someone close to them when they hear about someone else who's died, and particularly when it's so much in the news as the late Queen's passing is. So it is very important to be able to reassure them that the Queen had lived a long and full life, and that it's not unusual for someone of that age to die, and because they have, it doesn't mean that anyone close to the child will.
If the child finds talking may be difficult, are there any other activities they could do to help them cope?
Certainly, arts and craft activities are really helpful for children who might sometimes struggle to put into words what they're feeling and what their thoughts are. So they could try something like making a card, drawing a picture, or maybe doing some baking with another family member. We find it quite useful for people to make feelings biscuits, where they decorate biscuits with icing to show faces demonstrating different feelings.
Finally, when we are chatting to children, do you have any tips?
Yes, it's important to talk to children in language that they will understand. So keep it simple so that they can understand. Don't say, "I know how you're feeling," because you probably don't. But don't be afraid to say, "I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm here to help you if you need me to listen."
Caroline Ford, thank you so much for all the advice.
Thank you.
In 2007, as teenagers, Amy Brunsden and Tom Hylands faced a daunting day. They were to play key roles in meeting and guiding a royal visitor to Baden-Powell House in a landmark year for the Scouting movement.
But they need not have worried. Amy and Tom from Burgess Hill say it was they who were made to feel like royalty. 15 years on, they're both Scout leaders and good friends, and have been telling us about the day they met the Queen.
Back in 2007, it was the centenary of Scouting, and one of the events that was used to commemorate that was having the Queen visit Baden-Powell House in London and unveil a sculpture of herself. So I was really fortunate as a young person back then to be asked to be one of the people to meet the Queen, guide her with the then Chief Scout, Peter Duncan, as well. Amy and myself were quite close on the day because we were the two that were going and showing the Queen around.
I remember it was such an exciting day. There was such a build up to her arrival, and then when she came through, it was a bit of a whirlwind. You know, we showed her around the venue, and it just felt over and done. It was over and done with quite quickly, but you know, it was amazing to spend. We were really lucky to spend so much time with her. And when we met her, it was very much like she was so interested in us and our scouting stories, the adventures that we'd been on. You know, all of the kind of international friendships that we'd made through scouting. You know, it wasn't about her. You know, she's an A-list celebrity, but we never felt like it was about her. She was wanted to find out about us and was interested.
One of the things that really kind of sticks out on the day is you have all of that build up, but then when the Queen meets you, she's so warm and welcoming that it just felt completely natural.
I remember she was tiny, like much smaller than I kind of thought she would be, but she had such a big presence. She was obviously very polite, as you'd expect, but also just very genuine, you know, super interested in what we were doing. You know, I remember we were showing her some activities, and you know, I always felt like she wanted to get involved. She was that type of person, and she had a fantastic smile, and was just so engaging, and it was such an honour to meet her.
At the heart of scouting in this country, we all make a promise to do our duty to the Queen. So that inherently is a central part of scouting. I think also the Queen really represented the values of scouting in terms of integrity, care of others.
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating when we heard the news, right? So she's been the patron of the Scouts for as long as she's been on the throne. So she's a huge part of our organisation, and I know that Scouts around the world will really miss her.
First reaction was shock, because I think whilst you know that the Queen was 96, I don't think anyone ever kind of thought the day would actually come. But I think I reflect back on that personal time that I had with the Queen, and I was fortunate enough to have that.
Lovely memories. Now, for many people not able to travel to London to pay their respects, it's cathedrals across the region which have become a focal point for reflection.
Stacey Poole has been speaking to those at Chichester Cathedral who have found services and prayers a huge comfort.
Well, it's hard to imagine a more beautiful and welcoming place to come and light a candle and pause for a moment to remember your own unique and special memories of Her Majesty the Queen. A book of condolence opened on Friday, and since then there has been a constant stream of people queuing up to write their own special tribute.
And you want to do something, you know, that's why we came here today, because you felt like you need to do something.
Well, prayers have been said on the hour.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Heavenly Father, we bless your holy name for all that you have given us in and through the life of your servant, Queen Elizabeth.
With flowers being laid outside the cathedral with so many special messages.
Because she's been a constant, well, since I was born, and it brings up emotion that you didn't know you had. And obviously she's been part of all of our lives, hasn't she? And it's just a sad day when it happened, you know.
Everyone that comes here are here for the same reason, so it feels like a fellowship sort of thing, comfort that other people are going through the same thing that you are.
We know the time comes when we've all got to go, but it was so quick from the time she was on the telly until she died. It's just sad.
If you can't get to London, and it's just somewhere to come, and just to come and stand and have a little think about things. And yeah, it's one of those things you don't really know how you feel, but it certainly has helped come in.
Well, in difficult times, the church is often the focus of people's grief, and here at Chichester Cathedral, they're reaching out to the local community, offering support in whatever form they need.
We opened our doors straight away as soon as the news that the Queen had died came, and it's been very good for us to feel that we've been able to offer people a sense of comfort and a sense of meaning as they start to come to terms with the death of a much-loved Queen.
The church does seem to be playing a very important role, because a lot of people, I think, have been knocked sideways by this news. They weren't expecting it.
One of the pieces of inspiration that we take is the Queen's own Christian faith, in which she believed fervently in the promise of new life and resurrection, which the Christian faith gives. Her Christian faith was at the one of the foundations upon which she built her reign. And it's one of the things that helps sustain us and will sustain people through this period of grief.
Well, it's very clear that the Queen was loved by people both young and old, and there are hundreds of messages here left by local school children. Rest in peace, our Queen. This lovely drawing here from Harry, who's just 7, the Queen with her corgis. This is one of my favourites. To Queen Elizabeth, you were the best Queen ever. And this is a fantastic one to end on. To Our Majesty, thank you for looking after us for so long. We will miss you. Love, from Jacob.
Stacey there with some very sweet tributes. Now, as many flock to cathedrals, some people have flown in from all over the world. Julia McCarthy-Fox, who is originally from Sussex, has returned from her new home in New Zealand.
Over the years, Julia has taken tens of thousands of photos of the Queen and has been dubbed her superfan. She's now come back for the final chapter in an extraordinary story going back 40 years. Here's Malcolm Shaw.
Julia McCarthy-Fox must count as one of the late Queen's most loyal followers. Her fascination with the monarch began when she was 8 and saw the Queen at the South of England show. Later, she began to take photos on as many royal visits as she could possibly get to.
I started following the Queen back in the early 1980s. I've followed her the length and breadth of the country. I've followed her abroad. And I had my own personal relationship with her in that she knew who I was, she would talk to me, and I needed to finish my story with my Queen.
Julia recently emigrated to New Zealand, but when she heard of the Queen's death, she travelled over 11,000 miles to come back. This, her video diary of that journey.
I'm not really still sure how to deal with any of it because my head's a bit scrambled, to be honest.
Here we are at Los Angeles Airport, just boarding the flight to London. Not long now, and I'll be right in the middle of everything. Suddenly the whole thing is very, very real. I'm at Heathrow, Terminal 3, Queen's Terminal, funnily enough, which I saw the Queen unveil the plaque for. Now it's time to properly start saying goodbye.
No sooner had Julia arrived back in the UK than she headed to Windsor Castle to see the many tributes already left and to document the moment as she's done so many times before. But this is different.
Now the heart's gone out of it, and it's got no kind of life to it anymore if the Queen's not here.
10 years ago, Julia staged an exhibition of her photographs to mark the Queen's Diamond Jubilee.
You've watched the Queen so often at quite close quarters. What would you say is your perception of what she was really like?
I think she was kind, and I think she had a fabulous smile. She had two smiles. She had the smile that she would put on if you saw the car drive past, and it was you could see the thinking was, I'm the Queen, I'm supposed to be smiling now, so she, it would be a perfectly reasonable looking smile. And then there'd be the smile when she recognised people or she was really enjoying something, and that smile was just a beaming smile, and her eyes would sparkle.
The Queen has been such a huge part of your life. Do you feel a terrible sense of loss now?
Absolutely. I think it's awful. And one of the best thing that I saw in Windsor was a card on some flowers which had been written by a small child, and it said, "Dear Queen Elizabeth, I wish you were still alive." And I thought, well, that says it all, really.
Julia hopes to attend the lying in state and watch the Queen's funeral procession to pay her respects one last time. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Worthing.
And Philippa Drew joins us now to talk weather. Pip, lots of people like Julia will be queuing. What can they expect?
That's right. Well, as we've seen, many people braving the rain last night and this morning. The compensation for that was that it was a little bit on the mild side, but it is all changed now. We're seeing much drier weather coming in. That's going to last a fair few days, but it's going to come hand in hand with much fresher conditions, both by day, but perhaps most importantly by night. So if anyone is heading up for those overnight stints in the queue, then definitely time to take something warm to wrap up in, possibly down into single figures.
And many people, of course, heading up on Monday. What's the early indication for the weather then?
Yeah, so at the moment it still looks as though high pressure will be in charge, so a continuation of the dry weather. Still some strength in the sun where it comes through, but chilly again at the top and tail end of the day.
Pip, thank you very much for all the information. Let's have a look at the weather in more detail. Here's Philippa Drew.
So lots of dry weather in the forecast over the next few days. Some bright or sunny spells, but that notably fresher feel both by day and by night. And we can see just why. The earlier front that brought this morning's rain has now cleared away southwards. And here comes the high pressure building in from the north and west as we head through the weekend. Now we will keep one or two fronts very close to the east coast. Those could introduce a few showers from time to time, but the emphasis very much on dry conditions. And that will certainly be the case overnight tonight. So quite a bit of cloud feeding in from the northwest, but some clear spells here and there. And where we do see any prolonged clear spells, we could even see one or two mist or fog patches developing. But it will be the last relatively mild night for the time being, with temperatures for most of us underneath the cloud cover staying in double figures. Tomorrow morning then, quite a bit of cloud on the scene first thing. The outside chance of one or two showers, more especially around the middle part of the day. But I think into the afternoon, generally speaking, more in the way of bright or sunny spells coming through. In the best of the sunshine, highs of 19 or 20 degrees, but it will feel notably less humid than it has done of late. These are the times of high water for tomorrow then. For Brighton, they're 2:56 in the morning and getting on for 3:15 in the afternoon. Beyond that, as we saw, high pressure in charge, the emphasis on dry conditions, but fresher by day and, dare I say, a little chilly overnight.
Well, in a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale with the latest from Westminster.
For now, though, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.